about this? Well, Jorge Linares posted this via his Instagram account. It reads, Ryan Garcia, if you feel prepared enough for something big, then let's fight. But this time it won't just be training. Esta vez, ¿cuántos rounds podrás hacer? Porque recuerda que solo pudiste algunos rounds cuando hicimos sparring. Y para que puedas ganar 3 cinturones mundiales, tienes que dejar de hablar tanto y pelear con los boxeadores de verdad. Essentially what Jorge's saying is, this ain't gonna be training, man. If you want to get those world titles, you need to fight the real fighters. And I do share that sentiment. I think it's time.
That's my plan. I said I wanted to fight Avery Sparrow, then fight Duno here, then fight Linares, and then fight Luke Campbell. I haven't changed anything. This is just what it is.
I haven't gotten the chance to talk about this, that Shakur Stevenson, he's a world champion now. Devin Haney, he is a world champion now. And Ryan Garcia is he's very much a part of that generation of fighters, what is to be the next generation of superstars and pound-for-pound guys. He's a part of that generation.
Time to step up.
And in that generation, okay, 2 of these guys, they've already got world titles, 2 of these guys. They've gone from prospects to contenders to full-fledged, bona fide world champions. And Ryan Garcia, he's a part of that conversation. Ryan Garcia has a professional record of 19 wins and no losses. In that way, yes, it's very much time for a fight with a guy like Jorge Linares. For those kinds of guys, fights with those kinds of fighters. Your Ray Beltrons, your Jorge Linares, your Mercito Hesta. Those kinds of fighters that have competed at the world level. Some have been world champions. They've proven themselves, and they bring those experiences to the table. It's time for Ryan Garcia to have such a fight. Understand something, folks. I'm not the kind of boxing fan that's overly critical of these young guys, urging them to be rushed into situations that they may not be ready for sooner than necessary. I'm not one of those guys. But in the case of Ryan Garcia, he is approaching 20 professional fights. He does need some preparation for what this division has to offer, because he just so happens to be in a very live division with a lot of live animals, and he's going to require preparation. He's going to require the grooming that could see him becoming a world champion in time. A fight with Jorge Linares provides the necessary experience that he's going to need for what could happen in the very near future. He's in the same division as Vasyl Lomachenko, same division as Teofimo Lopez, same division as Devin Haney,
Luke Campbell,
Richard Comey, Ray Beltran, Mercito Hesta,
Javier Fortuna,
Lee Selby, Felix Verdejo. You name them. There's a lot of guys in this division, a lot of interesting situations that could come into fruition, and Ryan Garcia is going to need to make his bones. He's going to need that kind of preparation. He's coming off a sensational first-round knockout of Romero Duno. A lot of people wanted to paint the picture that this was a fight that Ryan Garcia was staying away from, that he was afraid of Romero Duno. He goes in there, he gets him out of there in 1 round, and that's great. That's great for the knockout reel. That's great for the highlights. But at the end of the day, when you get a guy out of there that fast, when you don't get those rounds in, you don't get that experience to draw from. It was a good win and a great knockout. I think, however, that against Jorge Linares, it could be a different story. Do realize that Jorge Linares has been a world champion in 3 weight classes. He throws good straight punches the same way that Ryan throws good straight punches, and he's got hand speed the same way that Ryan's got hand speed. The tiebreaker being that Jorge is just much more experienced, not just as a professional, but at the world level. The straight right hand of Jorge Linares is a factor. That's the same straight right hand that he dropped Luke Campbell with, and that's the same straight right hand that he dropped Vasyl Lomachenko with. I'll tell you what I'd like to see for Ryan Garcia. I'd like to see him fight Jorge Linares, and if he is successful in that fight, I would like to see him move on from that into a Luke Campbell fight. I think those are the kinds of experiences that Ryan really needs, because at this point, he's ranked in the top 10 ranked standings of 3 of the 4 alphabet titles. He's ranked at number 8 via the WBC, number 4 via the WBA, and number 6 via the WBO. The time is inching closer and closer for Ryan Garcia to step it up and prepare himself for what is to come. I think Jorge Linares in a fight against him will provide the necessary experiences that Ryan Garcia needs. Now, both of these guys are on the same side of the street. They're both in bed with Golden Boy, so there shouldn't be any cross-promotional or cross-network issues. That shouldn't be a factor at all. It's a non-issue. You know, they're both a golden boy. So that's not really a problem. I expect this fight to be made. I expect it to be made in a timely fashion because Ryan's last fight, he only fought for all of 1 round. So he should be pretty fresh, you know, all things considered. As far as Jorge, a lot was made over how he got starched against Pablo Cano, up there at 140 pounds. And I'll go back to what I said before. At 140, he's not cut out to be up there. He don't belong up there. But at 135, well, now you're cooking with rice. 135 is a better weight for Jorge. That's where he's formidable. That's where he can do the business. And if there's a sense of urgency here when it comes to Ryan Garcia, it's because he has very little places to go. You're already in a division where there's a lot of killers, a lot of live animals, a lot of guys that really come to fight, okay? But I'll tell you something. 135, 140. 140 is no refuge from 135. You got a lot of killers up there. And this creates a situation to where anybody who's at or around these weight classes, you know, they got to stay sharp. They got to be on their P's and Q's. Because if things are getting hectic at 135, well, 140 is no refuge. Things are hectic up there. There's a lot of killers up there. So you got to get your you got to get your rounds in. You got to earn your stripes. And for Ryan, yeah, it's about time. You know, you got Gervonta Davis moving into this weight class, right? Gervonta Davis gets a lot of shit for all the people that he's not fighting. All the matches that aren't happening. And Ryan Garcia, he's got a good buzz going. He's getting a lot of positive attention. He's looking good. He's doing his job. But he doesn't want to find himself in that kind of a situation to where he's not having certain fights and the public starts to notice. As it stands, Ryan's not a world champion. Not yet. He hasn't gotten a world title. But it's inching closer, that time, to where he's supposed to be in those conversations. It's fast approaching. It's around the corner. And you know, a fight with Jorge, it makes sense. So I look forward to seeing that, and I imagine that could very well be Ryan's next fight. In other news, it was announced earlier today that Daniel Jacobs and Julio Cesar Chavez are in fact going to be swapping punches on December 20th. It appears that all those issues that Julio Cesar Chavez was facing with VADA, the commissions, whatever the fuck was going on, they've sorted it out. And the fight has been made. My position on the fight itself hasn't changed. It's an opportunity for the both of them because they need a familiar name to go in there and look good against. For Chavez, it's an opportunity. For Jacobs, it's an opportunity. I will say that I favor Jacobs in this fight. I do. I think he is a more layered boxer with a more nuanced approach, relatively speaking, than Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And all this fiasco involving Chavez and VADA it's caused people's memories to be jogged. That, you know, Chavez got busted before, you know, with banned substances in his system. And this reminded people that happened before. So any hint, anything semblant of that happening here and now, you know, that VADA wanted to test him and he wasn't around. Apparently he ran away, something along those lines. It just, you know, it gives an air of suspicion to the boxing community that's watching that story unfold. Whatever it was, they've sorted it out. These two guys are going to fight.
All right.
It's a nice little fight to cap off the year, and it's a chance for Daniel Jacobs to make a splash in the super middleweight division, because if he does, there's a Callum Smith fight there for him. There's a Billy Joe Saunders fight there for him. And I'll tell you, for Chavez, he's lucky this fight is coming off. He is. It's a fortuitous situation for him, because this is it, man. On the other side of this could be the next chapter in his career, setting him up for fights with the aforementioned fighters. Maybe he gets a Smith fight. Maybe he gets a Saunders fight if you know, he beats Jacobs. Not saying he does or doesn't, but on the other side of that fight, those are realistic options, realistic possibilities. Can't afford to fuck this up. And I'll tell you that ahead of the Canelo fight, ahead of what was Chavez versus Canelo, I had no faith that this guy would go in there and show anything. None. Absolute zero. That fight played out exactly as I expected it to play out. Chavez went in there, did absolutely nothing. This situation is a little different because Chavez's back is to the wall.
This is it.
It's painted into a corner to where, look, you got to do something. If you're going to revive your career, the time is now to do it. So maybe we see a Chavez that gives a damn. Maybe we see a Chavez that makes a fight of it.
Maybe.
It's funny because, you know, I was skimming through boxing scene, and I saw that, you know, Roach declined Chavez, Freddie Roach declined Chavez, and demands commitment, you know, work ethic. This has always been a problem for Julio Cesar Chavez. You wonder if it's not too late. Is he going to turn it around, or are we going to see more of the same? Really don't know. It's intriguing. And, you know, we know that Eddie Hearn is attempting to build Billy Joe Saunders' profile here in America. That's why he's got him fighting on that internet card thing, with those YouTube guys. That's why he's got him fighting on that card, because he's looking to build his profile here stateside. I don't know what fighting on that card is going to do for him, because, I reiterate, the crowd that has gathered and what interest there is for KSI versus Poland Gall or Logan Paul or whatever his name is, the crowd and the interest associated with that event isn't your typical boxing fan. They're not really there for that. They're just there to watch these two guys do whatever it is they're going to do. So I don't know what's going to really happen for Billy or Devin in association with that. But what I will say is one surefire way to build Saunders' profile is to have him go in there and face the winner of Chavez versus Jacobs. That's right. That's one way you can build Billy's profile, get it somewhere here in America, because both of those guys are familiar names with the American boxing public. We've seen Jacobs in there with Golovkin. We've seen him in there with Canelo. Julio Cesar Chavez, the son of the legendary Mexican boxer Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. We've seen Chavez in there with guys. We've seen him in there with Andy Lee. We've seen him in there with Sergio Martinez. So we know these guys. And one way for Billy to really, gain an audience here stateside is if he were to fight the winner of that fight and have a spectacular showing, like the showing that he had over David Lemieux 1 or 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe longer. But that's one way you could do it. If Billy were to go in there and box the socks off of the winner of that fight, whether it's Jacobs or Chavez, people are going to be talking about it, because look at how many people were talking about him boxing the socks off of David Lemieux. Hindsight being 2020, you had a lot of guys after the fight downplaying that victory. But I remember vividly, like it was yesterday, people picking David Lemieux to knock out Billy Joe Saunders. I picked Billy on points. Seems I was right. And yeah, that helped his profile, because, Billy's a talented guy, but he was a sparsely active guy. So Billy needing to build his profile in America, and these two guys fighting each other, that sets the stage for what could be a fight between either Jacobs versus Saunders or Chavez versus Saunders. Let's see if it happens that way. Now tomorrow, we got two fights going down that at least I'm going to be paying attention to. Two actual boxing matches involving actual boxers and not YouTube personalities. The first fight being the WBC Eliminator in the 140-pound division between Chantel Cameron and Anaí Sanchez for what could be a shot at Jessica McCaskill's green belt. I'll keep it short, I'll keep it simple. The smart money's on Chantel Cameron. And I don't think for a second that she's going to languish with Anaí Sanchez the way that Jessica McCaskill did. It being that Chantel Cameron has a more layered approach. She's got more ways of fighting a fight. She can fight on the front foot, come forward and impose her will on the other girl, or she can fight on the back foot, set up the traps, set up the counters. It all depends on what is necessary. Chantel is one of the more well-rounded fighters in the entire division, but just so happens to pack the same kind of a punch that a Linares 2 packs, or that a Jessica McCaskill packs. I mean, she is a genuinely dangerous fighter for anyone opposite the ring of her. And the way she was laying into
in the last fight,
Anna Bashil, in that last fight at 135, I've no doubts that we're going to see something very similar here with Anaí Sanchez. However, Bashil is a bigger girl, in terms of dimensions, in terms of physicality. She's a bigger girl than Anaí, and I think that helped Bashil stay in the fight, her punch resistance, whereas Anaí, I'm not so sure she's going to be holding up too well once Chantel starts landing those shots. Essentially, the smart money's on Chantel, and the conservative prediction is Chantel on points. But I'm going to go a step further, and I'm going to say that I think Chantel is going to stop Anaí Sanchez. So I'm going with Chantel Cameron by way of knockout or technical knockout tomorrow in that WBC Eliminator. I think she is going to become Jessica McCaskill's mandatory challenger, and Jessica's going to have quite an opponent in front of her. She is. We then come to the top-ranked card airing on ESPN tomorrow night, what is to be the first title defense of the WBO Super Featherweight champion Jamel Herring against undefeated contender, challenger, Lamont Roach Jr. And I have to say that, given what I saw from Lamont the last time he was out there, he fought on the undercard for Canelo versus Jacobs. He was in there with Jonathan Oquendo, and I have to say that what I saw didn't inspire much confidence. I mean, I don't want to take a stab at the guy. I'm just saying that given how he looked and what Jamel Herring is capable of, I like Jamel Herring to win the fight and to retain his WBO title. You'll notice that Jamel is the more statuesque fighter in the fight. he's the longer guy, and that actually lends itself to his implementation. That long jab of his, that straight 1-2, that is ever present. It was ever present in the Masayuki Ito fight. Ito, who was then the WBO champion. Okay, Ito, who is a bigger guy and a bigger puncher than Lamont Roach. I think that long jab of Jamel Herring's is going to cause Roach a lot of problems. Roach's sweet spot seems to be mid-range to inside, where he's got good hand speed, good combinations. He's just not that big a puncher, that's the thing. And he's not the kind of front foot aggressive guy that's going to try to impose his will on the other guy. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. I mean, if you saw him in action the last time against the Kendo, this guy was all bloodied up by the end of the first round. He was worse for wear. He looked to be in trouble. And that's because he was letting the other guy set the tempo of the fight. In this situation, I think that while Jamel Herring is not a pressure guy per se, he might be the guy getting aggressive and getting on that front foot, jabbing his way in to land the more telling blows. And it's because Lamont Roach just doesn't strike me as being all that assertive. He wasn't assertive with Jonathan Oquendo, and I'm not convinced that he's going to be assertive here. Quite the opposite. I think that Lamont Roach is going to be subject to Jamel Herring's long jab, and that long jab is going to dictate the tempo, the space, and the real estate of the fight. That Lamont is going to struggle to get within range to land the kind of punches that he wants to land, but when he does, Jamel's going to tie him up.
Smother him.
And that's if he's fortunate enough to get close to start landing punches. Quite honestly, I trust the mental fortitude, the maturation, the mental toughness, and the ability to stick to a game plan. I trust Jamel Herring's ability to do these things and implement them more than I trust that Lamont Roach is going to show up and be a different guy. Jamel strikes me as a more put-together, more finished product than Lamont does. Lamont looks like he's kind of still working things out. Kind of a man versus boy situation with a 10-year age difference between the two fighters. Jamel being 34, Lamont being 24. Sometimes that works against the fighter, but I don't think that's the case here. I think that Jamel Herring is the more maturated fighter who was able to successfully diffuse the aggression and the punching power of a bigger sack of potatoes than Lamont Roach. Bigger sack of potatoes in Masayuki Ito. If he was able to offset that guy's power for a full 12 rounds and win wide on the cards, I'd have to say that makes me confident that he can do the same or better against a smaller guy who really ain't that big a puncher. So my official pick is Jamel Herring to retain the WBO title and win that fight on points. To sum it all up, it just boils down to trust, and I trust Jamel more than I trust Lamont.